We think women need to talk more openly about money because money really matters. It shouldn't be embarrassing or confusing. Join the conversation. We'll be discussing a whole range of topics which will help you get comfortable with your finances. Money Matters. Brought to you by AJ Bell.
Hello and welcome to another AJ Bell Money Matters podcast. I'm Laura, and with me in the pod that's set to overflow with good news for a change is Danni. Hey Danni.
Hi Laura, hi everyone. Yes, it's not always that we get to talk about the progress that is being made when it comes to women's finances. In fact, rarely ever do we. But we felt that since this year in fact, has delivered a number of really important milestones, we'd take the opportunity.
Yeah, so that is because our one big thing this week is the fact that 50 years ago this month, a woman could finally open a bank account, take out loans and mortgages without a man's signature, and also be protected from workplace discrimination around hiring and promotion. I mean, great news. Does feel like 50 years, not that long ago, Danni.
It does. And I was talking to my mum about this because she was 26 when this happened. And she does remember having to get her dad to sign in order for her to get a bank account. And so much has changed, but it was quite slow to take effect, even though 50 years ago, women got these rights. It still felt quite slow for it to actually happen in real life, she said. So we're going to dig into all the ways that women's financial freedoms have improved. And I know that you also wanted to chat about Lily Allen's new album.
I do. And not just because I obsessively listened to the album since it came out. We don't need to hear about my musical taste, but because of the very public reasons that she wrote the album, which tackle the kind of betrayal and her relationship breakdown and ultimate divorce. And the album is also hopefully the way she's going to put her financial life back together again.
I'm really interested for that one. I've not heard the album, but people do keep talking about it, so I must get it on my playlist. But our guest this week has it all together. I'm going to try not to hold that against her. Eleanor Asmakopoulos is a content creator, and her Instagram account, Eleanor Everyday, that's at Eleanor, ELENAA.everyday, has a following of people who are all interested in her life. And she's got this 75-day challenge at the moment to get hotter, richer, fitter. And obviously, the richer bit rather perked up our ears, especially because she's made thousands of pounds selling her unwanted stuff online. So stay tuned for her tips.
Yeah, really interested to hear that. So let's crack on with our one big thing. So on the 12th of November, 2025, we marked the 50th anniversary of the Sex Discrimination Act 1975. And it really tore up the old rule book and gave women an entirely new one, particularly when it came to their financial freedoms. So it gave women the right to open their own bank accounts, apply for credit or a credit card without a man having to co-sign, take out loans and mortgages on their own, be protected from workplace discrimination around hiring, pay and promotion, and also to access housing and services on the same terms as men. So a huge piece of legislation at the time. And like we said, quite mad that it was only 50 years ago.
It does feel like it should have been hundreds of years ago rather than just 50 years ago, because so much has changed in that 50-year period. And I think a lot of women, certainly my daughters who are in their teens, they just kind of assumed that my generation, and almost all of my generation, it has been the case, but even for my mum's generation, that she would have had the same rights and privileges that they've grown up with. So I think it has kind of caught a lot of women on the hop. And I was saying earlier that some of the things took a while to sort of come through. I do remember when I took out my first mortgage, whenever the bank would write to my husband and I, who both were on the mortgage letter would always be addressed just to him, and it would always be just Mr. Earnshaw, and I would just be on the account as well. So, you know, things have changed, but they've progressed quite slowly. And I guess some of the things maybe we'd rather we didn't have to pay for, things like, you know, gas and electric and that sort of stuff.
I think it's, you know, that point that you make about it changed, but then it took a while to actually properly change is probably so true. It's like the legal rights came in, but we know that it takes much longer for societal change to happen and for people's attitudes to change. And I think it is useful, you know, for you're talking about your daughters there, for that generation to hear how recently those things legally changed, and that probably reflects why some attitudinal change still hasn't happened among, you know, some people or in certain areas of women's lives, because we know that is slower to happen. These kind of things become entrenched in people and in generations, don't they?
They do. And what was really interesting is that this was a huge year for women's rights, because that came into law in the December of 1975. And that was the same time that the 1970 Equal Pay Act also came into force. And, you know, that was also a huge milestone in terms of, you know, getting parity with men if you were doing the same job. And it was a way to really start to tackle the gender pay gap, which we know is still very much in existence. I mean, we talk here about Money Matters. Our big focus is on the gender investment gap. And I have to say, if you have never read our launch report, do take a look on our website, which is ajbellmoneymatters.co.uk, because the gap, I mean, this is an astonishing figure. And I fall over this figure every time I say it. 1.65 trillion pounds. And I still can't get my head around the number of zeros that is. But we do know that a lot of the gender investment gap starts with the gender pay gap. And that has also taken a long time to start to narrow. And we're still not there yet. So we had some figures from the Office for National Statistics. And a couple of pods ago, I was talking with Charlene about this. But the recent figures show that over a decade, the past decade, it's fallen by over 25%, now stands at 6.9% for full-time employees and 12.8% if you take into account part-time employees. But I think it's been a really interesting year with lots of talk about women's roles, women's workplace rights, women's issues with jobs when it comes to things like AI, and the fact that certainly the UN was saying that more women's roles are likely to be replaced by AI faster than men's roles. So I think, you know, the fact that we're talking about this as a success and we're looking back 50 years, we've got to be really careful that we don't think, hey, it's all done.
Yes, 100%. I think, yeah, when it comes to that kind of equality and when it comes to kind of attitudes and really closing that gender investment gap. Now, we know that the gender pension gap is a big part of that overall gender investment gap. And we know that auto enrollment, so where you're automatically enrolled into your company's pension scheme, that has helped to narrow that gender pensions gap over the years. But we still know that there are big barriers in place, and we need to make sure that we don't forget that fight that women put up to get these financial freedoms in the first place. And also, on the topic of fighting, my favourite topic so far this month is Lily Allen's new album that is out. So I think it's a really interesting one from a kind of women's financial freedom point of view as well. So obviously her new album and her personal life, which she displays and lays to bear in the album, has been all over the newspapers the past few weeks. If you've not heard about this, this is the musician Lily Allen, and she's back with a new album, and it's charting her, well, the demise of her relationship, really, and then her ultimate divorce from her husband, who is David Harbour. He's an actor in Stranger Things. I hadn't really come across his work, but he is Hollywood famous. She's had huge acclaim for the album. She's now doing a tour next year, appearing at festivals. So she's kind of back after a very long hiatus in terms of her career. But She said that she's no longer financially stable since splitting from David last year. And she says she's been forced back into work in order to support her two daughters. So she's got a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter with her previous husband. Now, obviously, here she's not claiming poverty. She's reportedly worth about £3 million. She has famous parents, meaning that she's been often referred to as a Nepo baby, although she says that her parents don't fund her lifestyle. But she said that a year ago she was financially stable, and since the breakup, she isn't, and she now has to go back to work. Obviously, in some ways, this isn't relatable. She, owns a house in Notting Hill. She's clearly not on the breadline, but and has more money than all of us. But I do think it's an interesting, very public case of the hit to your finances and the change to your finances when you become divorced that actually affects so many women out there. So I think it's just interesting to see this public case of this. So she's talking about this financial stability, about having to return to work. Now, for her, that's a relatively easy task. She writes a new album, although that is obviously hard to do, and records a new album and releases it. And because it's done very well, she will then profit from that. For a lot of women, if they've taken a big career break to look after their family or for whatever reason, it's not going to be as easy to get back into work. So I thought it was just a very interesting one of kind of the impact that divorce can have on women particularly and just on finances generally. Often a divorce will lead to big lifestyle change, whether that's downsizing your house, reassessing your budget, reviewing your working situation, reviewing your debts, building up your savings again. And I think it's always interesting when we hear these big celebs that have been covered in the newspapers loads, talking about issues that actually, in a different way and a different income level, affect a lot of people out there. A lot of normal people out there.
It is interesting, particularly because most famous people, they're only going to talk about money when they're doing well. So, if they're launching a new brand or they've signed a particularly big deal, they don't tend to talk about their finances when things are more difficult. They tend to shy away from that. And maybe it's a sign of the times that we are feeling more comfortable about talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to finances.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting. I mean, Lily Allen has always been very honest. If anyone's read her autobiography, if you haven't, I really recommend it. It's very good, but it is very honest. And so she has always been, very honest talking about the good and the bad. But you're right. I think this whole trend on social media of talking about money a bit more, maybe it means that just talking about some of the negative side of money is also more palatable now. Right, now it is time for our guest interview this week. And with lots of people thinking about their budgets, particularly how they can make them stretch a bit over Christmas, or maybe looking to try and make a bit of extra cash, we thought we would chat with someone who has made a career out of it. So Eleanor Asimakopoulos makes a living from a whole variety of side hustles, and she shares her experience with thousands of followers on Instagram each day. Her Instagram account is Eleanor with 2 A's .everyday. Right now, she's just started a 75-day challenge to get hotter, richer, fitter. And as Danny said earlier, we of course want to focus on the richer part of that. Eleanor recommends taking small steps, but above all, taking the first step, which is definitely a motto we can get behind here. She's got some great tips. So let's listen to what she had to say.
Eleanor, you make a great living from what many people I think would probably call side hustles. So, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely a slow progression. I've been doing this for around 5 years now. And now it's my full-time job. I've got all these different side hustles. But how it basically started out was it was actually in COVID. So it was January 2021. And essentially, I was in my first graduate role and I didn't really love my role, but I was only 4 months in. It was COVID. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? I can't switch jobs. Um, so we just got to have to find something that gives me a bit more purpose and a bit more income elsewhere. So I started looking into different ways I could make more money and different ways I can make money online. And how I did that was I went on YouTube and then I was just looking at different like money channels, so Patricia Bright, for example, and things like that, that just explain different money concepts and different ways to make money online. But the one thing that I did do that most people don't do is I was watching all of the ads as well that I was getting served, because a lot of them were talking about different side hustles and different ways you can make money as well. So that gave me more ideas of things that I could research and decide which side hustle I wanted to do. And that's how I found my first side hustle, which was selling books online.
A lot of people might be like, okay, well, I can't write a book. That's not for me. But there are ways that just everyone can make money just by looking around their house. And that's a brilliant way because you can declutter and earn a bit of extra cash. And a lot of people, as we sort of head in towards Christmas, will be going, actually, a little bit of extra cash would be really nice. So I know you get asked this all the time, but how can people start with that? Because you've had real success there as well.
Yes. So I always say this because that is something that I get asked a lot online as well is, but where do I start? Because when I said, oh, I started selling books, it does sound very complicated and it is more of a business rather than a side hustle. But I do think it's really good to determine, whereas if you just want something quick, just a quick bit of cash, the best thing is to do is to start by selling stuff in your house. And that's what I always recommend to people. So yeah, I think the best way I do it is, it does seem a bit like a long task. So trying to break it up into smaller tasks. I always think go room by room is always the best way. Or even if that's too much, cupboard by cupboard, just one time. You don't have to do it all at once. And then also, like, for example, me, I just have this massive pile of clothes and random other things behind my sofa at the moment that I need to put online because I've done the sweep now, and now I'm like, okay, next task is actually getting them up on the site and go room by room, then actually putting it in a pile. Like, I always like to do charity pile and selling pile, because there are stuff which you're not going to need and you're probably not going to sell. So why not give it to charity? But you might as well do it whilst you're decluttering anyway, and go from there. And yeah, and put it online later down the line.
So a lot of people would use sites like Vinted, Depop, but I know a lot of people do it, and sometimes I've certainly done it, and stuff's gone on, and it's sat there, and it's not sold, and then I just get bored and give up. So, what are your top tips to actually make it work for you to sell?
I actually have a different way of thinking about selling clothes online. Try and think of yourself kind of as a clothes store. So think of yourself as, I don't know, Zara or ASOS or something. If you go on ASOS, you do not see a piece of clothing. For example, most people sell clothes, that's the easiest thing to sell, but you don't see a dress hanging on a cupboard door, and it's all scrunched and it doesn't look very nice. People can't imagine it on themselves. And so I like to think, okay, when you go onto ASOS, for example, you see it on a model, you see it and the clothes are, looking their best. They are ironed. They, they're in a nice environment. Maybe they're on a plain background, or maybe it is like a kind of lifestyle shot. These are the kind of things that differentiate yourself when you are selling. Think of it as marketing rather than you just trying to make a bit of extra income online. So make sure that if it is clothes, try them on if you can, or get someone else to try them on, and so people can imagine it on themselves. Or if it's like, I don't know, a coffee machine, do you have it in a nice coffee nook so people can imagine it in their homes rather than, just on your carpet on the floor, because that doesn't necessarily look as nice and people can't imagine themselves using it. So I would say those things, and then also make sure like everything's ironed. Make sure you have good lighting. I think lighting is super important, so people can see the true colors and everything, and everything just looks nicer in natural light. So if you can do it on a sunny day, that always helps. I would say those are my top tips. And also another quick thing is pricing. I do think a lot of people get it wrong with pricing. And for example, if you get a dress from Zara and it's £25 new, and you wear it for a year, but maybe you haven't worn it that much, but okay, it's last year's Zara. People don't want to spend £20 on a last year's Zara dress. Be realistic and put it on lower, and you'll be surprised at how much you can actually make by just putting it on for £10 instead. And you'd rather get £10 than no pounds because no one wants it for £20. That's how I like to think of it.
What about engaging with the website? Because I know one of the mistakes that I make all the time is I put something on and then I disappear, and then I come back a few months later and I've maybe missed some messages from people saying, would you take this? Or I've had no interest whatsoever and it doesn't seem like anyone's seen it.
Mm, I would say make sure you have your notifications on your phone, and or potentially just to have a reminder on your iPhone to check it every couple of days, or every day at 7. I don't know, however you like to work, because it is true, and you don't want to get bad marks, for example, on Vinted, or if you don't reply to people and someone's bought an item, or you don't send the item, that does affect your reputation, and then your clothes don't get, or your items don't get pushed out as much. Um and on Facebook Marketplace, for example, if you don't reply to people, then you're just not going to sell it. And so, and then more and more people will start putting up that item, and your item gets lost. So it just keep trying to check as much as possible. And the best way I think of doing it is just by putting an alarm on your phone or something like that.
So, consistency, get an iron and think about how the item looks. They seem really simple, but I would imagine for a lot of people, they're listening to this going, oh, yeah, okay.
But and also it is a bit more effort. It is having to get out the iron all your clothes, or actually trying them on. It is a lot of effort. It is, especially when you've got a pile of clothes of 50 clothes or something silly, and you're just sitting there like, no. But just get it done. Like I said, bulk it, do it in bulk, and just go for it.
Now, I know one of the things that you've got on your Instagram account at the moment is a challenge to become hotter, richer, fitter. And the one thing I like about it is that you say start small, but start. Now, that's a great tip for getting fit, but also for getting to grips with your finances. So, what have you found has been the most challenging?
Yes. So that's why I kind of put it in the challenge, because that's an area which everyone wants to improve. I definitely want to improve. I'm always learning. There's always new things be to be known about, I suppose, especially when it comes to money. And one thing that I found most challenging, especially at the beginning when starting to make extra money, and also in general, was budgeting. And you're getting this money in, but okay, you might have to pay tax on it, or have you thought about your long-term savings or investments? It's not just, maybe a lot of people try and think, oh yeah, I just want it in the short term, I just want it in the short term. But when you start making more and more money, you do have to think about those longer term things. So yeah, actually budgeting and not just seeing this money and being like, yay, I can spend it all, is probably the hardest thing at the beginning, because you're just excited because you're getting extra money. That's me anyway.
So if you thought long term then, because obviously now you're self-employed, so you
Yeah.
have to think about things like a pension or investments.
Yes. So I do invest. So I started my side hustles 5 years ago, nearly, and I started investing 4 years ago. So I just started small, and I was investing £100 a month. And because I was getting this money, that with my side hustles, when I did have a 9 to 5 as well, I wasn't using any of that money either. So I was like, I might as well put it in and investing, I don't know, different types of investments essentially. So yeah, I started with £100 a month, then I went up to 200, then I went up to 300, and I've just been going up depending on my income. uh, and then also obviously got different saving pots and things like that. But that's just thinking about longer term.
So when you made the decision to start investing, there are some great resources out there now, but did you talk to friends about it? Did you listen to podcasts? What gave you the confidence to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was a mix of things. Like I said, I was looking at a lot of YouTube accounts which were explaining different ways to save and invest and make money. So I learned from different YouTube channels, but then also I think a big part of it was talking to different friends and family and seeing what they were doing. And actually, yeah, my friend, she had spoken to a financial advisor and she passed on that information to me, and I kind of went with that at the beginning. So yeah, that's how I first decided what investments to invest in and what index funds to put my money in. But I have done more research since then. But yeah, even now, sometimes I use AI, ChatGPT, and things. Obviously, you do have to take that with a pinch of salt because it's not always correct. But it's a good place to bounce ideas and understand things in layman terms as well.
I like the fact that you talk about money and that you talk to friends and family about money, because for so long money was a taboo subject. But particularly over the last few years, where people have really struggled with the cost of living, I think it's become something which is more accessible.
Yeah, and I think also with the rise of social media as well, there's benefits and negatives in the money space, but I do think it is good that a lot more people are being more transparent online, because you can see that, okay, some people who are just completely the same as anyone, me and you. I mean, that's what I first started posting about. I was just talking about different side hustles and how much money I made. There is no difference. This is what I always say. There's no difference between me and you. It's just that I started, and that's the like you were saying before. It's good. You just got to start, and it's just small things that can lead to other things and get you where you want to go. But unless people are talking about it, you don't necessarily know what options there are for you and how to go about things. So it's just trying to listen and be a sponge to as many people as possible, because they might teach you something that you didn't already know.
Helena, it's been lovely to talk to you. I've just got to ask one more question. How are you doing on your journey, the hotter, richer, fitter journey?
I'm good. It's going well. I started it again this week, so I'm only a week in. But yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm feeling good. I've just put a, f- a few more things online to sell, including my wedding dress. So fingers crossed, I'll get some money for that one. Uh, and hopefully, they'll boost my income for Christmas. We'll see.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Danny.
That was Eleanor Asimakopoulos from the Instagram account eleanor.everyday.
Now, I know that you're probably wondering a couple of things right now, Laura, and let's start with the obvious, which is, did Eleanor have a confession? Because yes, she did, and I think that will lead neatly onto the second. And before we let you go, we always ask one question of all our guests at the end, and that is for a financial confession or dilemma.
Yes, I have a few of these. No, I would definitely say my initial thing, which I always say to people if you are starting a side hustle and it's doing well, is start a limited company, or at least look into your options, because I definitely started mine later than I should have, considering I was earning a full-time wage as well from my job. So definitely made a bit of an error there regarding tax benefits and ways that I could have been making my money work a bit more efficiently for myself, because I definitely didn't have a limited company soon enough. So I would say that would have been a bit of a rookie from me.
Thank you so much. That's something I think a lot of people who go down the side hustle route are really interested in. So yeah, we'll definitely speak to someone about tax implications down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert, but my accountant told me it was a bad move for a while. So definitely ask an accountant. Yeah. So they're very helpful.
It does lead perfectly onto the second, because whilst tax used to be a boring topic, it is now front page news, isn't it? All can't move for tax stories out there, Danni, and we're being asked about them constantly because the budget is coming up.
The budget is coming up, and I didn't ask Eleanor about tax when we were doing the interview because she said, look, she really doesn't get it. She leaves all of that to her accountant. And I know that lots of people might be wondering about when they're selling their own stuff, do they have to pay tax, how much, and that kind of thing. And the time is now fast approaching, first of all, for the budget, but second of all, when we all need to figure out if we've got to fill in a self-assessment tax return. And there are lots of reasons that you might need to. So we thought that we would go straight to the horse's mouth. So our next episode will feature a chat with the wonderful Abby Glue from accountants and financial coaching firm Oriander Collective, and she's going to spill the beans on all those tax issues. So make sure you like and subscribe wherever you listen to your pods. And of course, let everyone else know if you think that they should take a listen.
But that is it for this episode. As I mentioned, the budget is hurtling towards us. So it's next week as we're recording this. Just to say that our sister podcast, AJ Bell Money and Markets, will be putting out a special episode on the same day that the budget comes out. Danni and Charlene will be looking at all of the announcements and working out what it means for you and your finances. So you can find that pod in all the usual places. But until next time, thanks for listening.
Before you go, please remember this podcast is for educational purposes, and the views expressed don't necessarily reflect those of AJ Bell. The podcast isn't telling you if a certain investment is suitable or not. Don't forget that the value of investments can change, and you can lose money as well as make it. It's also important to remember that how you're taxed will depend on your individual circumstances, and rules can change. The way an investment performed in the past may not be the same as how it behaves in the future. If you want help, go see a qualified financial advisor.